us, but we'll have a few minutes here during introductions for more people to jump on board. So thank you everyone for joining us here today. For those of you who I don't know, my name is Chrissy Beswick. I am the chairperson for the Women's Alliance Network Board, or we call ourselves WAN. We're really excited that you can be here with us today to learn some real practical tools that you can put in your toolbox to help engage students. Over the past several months, I don't have to tell any of you that education has really changed. Everything that we're doing from, the elementary school level, the high school level that some of us may be seeing with our children or grandchildren, we are also seeing in a very real way here at our work at Rowan University, where we've quickly shifted to a majority of online delivery, especially over the summer during the quarantine months of COVID. So I'm very grateful that Natalie Kautz was able to join us here today to give us some tips and tricks and guidance to really help pull those students in, to keep them engaged, keep them learning, and really to keep them loving learning, right? That's what's really important for student success. So before I turn it over to Denise, who is our fabulous program committee chair, I'm just going to share with you in our chat box some information about our schedule of events for the year. So we have some more exciting events coming up. Everything that we're doing is virtual, and everything that we're doing is completely free. I would also like to remind everyone that the WAN events are designed for all. It is our intention and real commitment that these programs, although they are offered and designed by people who identify as women, that we are open to everyone, regardless of their gender identity or expression. So I want to encourage you to help us to spread the word about these amazing events. Again, they're all free. They are all professional development. So they're a way for you to help continue your professional development and improvement in your work. We have some amazing events coming up later this year. The next thing that we have coming up in November that I just want to plug very briefly is our leadership talk series. And that's where we're going to be featuring women leaders from Rowan University from a diverse perspective. So we're going to be getting these people's very short stories of how they came into leadership, how they kind of propelled themselves there, and some of the challenges and successes they've had on the way. So that way we can really take that knowledge and that sort of story and apply it for us and how it fits us where we are on our professional journeys. I encourage you all to attend. You'll be seeing announcements about that event registration coming up very soon. And as always, if you have any questions, you can visit our website. You can feel free to reach out to me personally or to any one of our board members. Our job is to really help you get engaged and to answer any questions that we could. So that's it for me. I'm going to turn it over to Denise. So Denise Dennery is our fabulous Programming and Special Events Committee chairperson. She is amazing, and she has really worked very hard to bring this event to you today. So Denise, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Chrissy. It's fantastic to be here. I am thrilled today to introduce to you Dr. Natalie Katz, who joined the Rowan family in 2010 and the Faculty Center in 2018. She earned her doctoral degree in educational leadership from Rowan University in 2016. As the assistant director, she works closely with the director. She's responsible for the Midsemester Focus on Teaching and Learning, mentoring programs, and the administration of the online student evaluations of teaching effectiveness. Natalie helps out with new faculty orientation and assists with grant and award applications as needed. Natalie represents the Faculty Center at workshops and presentations across the university and serves as the Vice President for Service of Alpha Epsilon Lambda, the Graduate Honor Society. Natalie teaches reasoning and functions as an adjunct professor in the mathematics department in the College of Science and Mathematics. Natalie, thank you enormously for being here today with us to talk about engaging with students, tips for faculty. I hand it over to you.
Thank you very much, Denise, for the nice introduction, and thank you to Teresa and Chrissy and the entire Women's Alliance Network for inviting me here today. And as Denise said, we're going to be talking about engaging with students, especially in the online environment that we find ourselves in, this remote environment, and try to give you some tips today that you can take away and go ahead and improve the second half of your semester here. So, as I go through these tips, I'm going to also try to, when I can, do the tips with you so that you can kind of see how it's done as well as just hearing me present it. So you want to have an opening slide, and you saw my opening slide a minute ago, and the opening slide actually answers the questions for students. Am I even in the right place? Because when students come into class or come into a virtual class, they might be a little bit worried, like, have I got the right link and everything? And so it's a good idea to just have a title or an introductory slide up there. And you want to give them the information that they're seeking, which is, am I here in the right spot? And I also have my photo there because that helps to make a connection with my students so they can see what I look like. And that can start to build a community in your classroom. I also have put on this first slide my links to my biography and also to my office, which is the Faculty Center for Excellence in Teaching and Learning. And later on, this slideshow can be available to you and you can follow these links. There's going to be a lot of links and you can continue to get more information if you wanted to by following some of these links. So I also like to start off with some ground rules. One of the ground rules that is a pretty good ground rule is to have people mute themselves, because if everybody is talking or a dog is barking or a baby's crying in the background, it makes it a little bit hard to hear. And so it's a good idea to either mute all your students as they come in or ask them to mute themselves. And that also puts the participants at ease because we know exactly what to expect by doing these ground rules. And another thing that I'd like you guys to do is I'd like you to participate in the activities or in the polls, if we're able to do that. And then also, if you could type your questions in the chat box, then we'll answer the questions at the end. And the girls from the Women's Alliance Network will help me out with getting those questions answered. So we have some objectives that we're going to talk about today. And again, that's another good thing to do, is to state your objectives, state where you're heading right at the beginning so that students know what's about to happen, and that helps them to stay engaged. So our objectives today are, we're going to talk about student engagement, obviously. We're going to talk about opening, the beginning of a class, attendance, building community in the classroom, peer reviews, some engagement activities that you can do, active learning, polls, questioning students, checkpoints, feedback, and then we're going to talk about some closing activities. So again, it's comforting to know what's coming up ahead. So let's first talk about student engagement, because that's the idea of this entire presentation. What the heck is student engagement? What does that even mean? What can we do to promote student engagement in our own classrooms? Well, student engagement is when you have students that are paying attention. They're not only have come to class or turned on their WebEx meeting, but they're actively engaged, they're actively learning. Because sometimes students can turn on the meeting and then head back to bed. And you may or may not know if they're still there or not. But by keeping everything active and constantly checking in with them, you'll know if they're still there. You'll know if they're still paying attention and that they're learning as we go along. Because it's hard really for students to listen to a person talk for a long period of time. It's not very interesting and they might tune out, and we want to try to let them not tune out. We want to try to keep them on task as we go through this. So student engagement has several parts, and it's the ABCs, coincidentally. There's an affective part. You want the students to feel like they're at home. You don't want them to be uncomfortable. You want them to be comfortable. You want to have a rapport with them. You want to kind of know them and let them know you. They want to feel safe. They want to feel included. Then there's a behavioral piece where they want to be active, they want to participate, and they want to do some learning and take responsibility for that. And then there's the cognitive piece, where students want to know and explore and be interested in this topic so that they can see a purpose. How am I ever going to use this in my life? And engagement is a mixture of all of those three. So let's break down the day. Let's break down the class period. Well, you're going to start off with some sort of an opening. Now, in my class this morning at 8 a.m., I was teaching my math class, and we were talking about the fog, because that was what was going on this morning. It was very foggy. It was very dark. It didn't feel like 8 a.m. It felt like about 6 a.m. because it was so dark. And we were talking about that just as a way to get the students to get to feel a little bit more comfortable before we start getting into that scary math stuff. We were just having some light chit-chat conversation. And it's trying to relax the students by having just an ordinary old conversation with them. And it gets me to know them too, and then they can know me a little bit better also. Another thing that you might want to do is to try to do a virtual icebreaker. And I've put a link here of 18 best virtual icebreakers for your Zoom meeting. That also, again, breaks the ice and gets the students to feel a little bit more comfortable. And remember that students are going to remember the first couple minutes of the meeting, and they're also going to remember the last couple of minutes of the meeting. And so those first couple minutes in the meeting are kind of important. And so you want to do something interesting, something that's going to grab their attention and their focus. Another thing that you could do is you could do some sort of a temperature check. Ask them, how are you feeling today? Ask them how their weekend was if it's Monday morning. Ask them, like I was doing this morning, about the weather. Another idea is to do a poll with them. Some people could do the poll just to get the students going. In this poll, somebody asked, who was your silent hero in the class this month? And then students can type in their answers. And then the teacher created a word cloud out of it, where with a word cloud, the larger the word, or the name in this case, more people have said that. And so in this case, it looks like Alex was the rock star this month, followed closely by Peter, Priya, and Kate, who were coming in as a close second. And it's a way of celebrating the success of certain students. Alex, whatever you did a great job this month or this week or whatever you're doing for this poll. And everybody's name's up there, so everybody sort of feels included. And the ones that are larger are the ones that were voted on more, and they probably feel pretty good about themselves without really penalizing the other students either. Josh Schwartz, in his article, Online Education, Best Practices for Ensuring Student Success, what I've linked here, says that you want to try to get to know your students. Ask them these chit-chatty questions, and then you got to get down to business. You want to give some instructions, be very specific with the instructions, and you want to give them support. You want to tell them that you're available for office hours. Maybe you have set office hours that you go to, but you might also say, and if those don't work for you, let me know and we'll work something out. But I'm here for you and I'm here to support you. You want to offer resources. Tell them about the tutoring center. Tell them about the wellness center and the mental health things that they have, and offer all kinds of different resources. That shows that you're caring too, and that you know that you can't do it all on your own, but there are so many resources here at Rowan that can help you out. And also when you're doing your opening, you want to think about your audience. Think about their age, what's important to them, what's not important to them perhaps, and think about how they're feeling that day. Now you want to, at the beginning of class, take attendance. And this article says that you should take and track attendance and tell students why. Why are you taking attendance? Give them a reason so that they don't think it's just for nothing. And you might even want to give them credit for attending class. Give them a couple points for attending class. Some teachers might take away points, give them a penalty for not attending. Well, that's more negative. If they're getting points for attending, that might make them more likely to want to come. Some studies say that you should take attendance at both the beginning and the end of class. This is the article by Kristen Zenko, Nurturing a Classroom Community During Distance Learning, where they talk about different aspects of attendance. They say that sometimes you want to meet with a giant group, the whole class group, and other times you might make a smaller group. And when you go and make the small groups, you could do it randomly, but it might even be better to do it intentionally. think about how you're going to build the smaller groups. And that's one of the things that I do in my class. I might group all the people that had difficulty on chapter 2 in one group, and then I might go visit that group and give them some help there. Or I might group them in a different way and make smaller groups, and then you can take attendance within the smaller groups also. Sometimes you want the students to be seen. You could ask them to turn their cameras on. Now, we can't really force them to put their cameras on, but we could always ask them to put their cameras on, and that gives us an idea of what they look like, and we can kind of see what they're doing. Now, sometimes that could be a distraction. If you really want them to focus on you, you might say, turn your cameras off right now. And then maybe as they go to smaller groups, you might say, this is a good idea to turn your cameras on so that you can see each other, because now we're having a smaller group discussion. You want to make sure that the students aren't flying under the radar and not really being there. You want to make sure they're actually there. If they're a little bit feeling funny about putting their cameras on, another idea would be to ask them for their photos, or ask them if you can take a photo. And what you can do is at the beginning of the class, you can run a slideshow with their name and their photo and maybe a little tidbit about themselves. We do that when we do new faculty orientation. We ask each of the new faculty to give us a photo, and we make a slideshow run, and everybody can watch it. And that helps them to get to know each other. And that's part of building a classroom community, which is my next topic, building community. So to build a classroom community, you want to create these opportunities for the classmates to interact with each other. It shouldn't just be all you talking at them. That can be part of it, but you also want them talking to each other. You want to build partnerships. You want to build small groups so that they can get to know a couple of people in their class, because that's really hard with online learning. And that's one of the biggest complaints about students, that they say, well, I don't feel like a connection. And it's important to have that connection. And try to make some community building activities. Maybe do a discussion board, for example. Put students in smaller groups, let them talk about a topic, and then switch the groups up and talk again. You want to try to provide some synchronous opportunities, if you're not already, like that aren't part of the class. For example, a weekly study session. You might say on Friday at 10 o'clock, come join me here. We're going to discuss the upcoming test, and when we can ask questions, and it's very informal. That's another way to build community, and see who shows up and have them work together. Another way to build community amongst younger students is to try to connect with what they connect with, using music, using pop culture references, using social media. That's your Twitter and your, goodness, what do they use? Snapchat and all those kinds of things. Bring those parts of their world into the classroom. So for me, I teach math. If I was going to do a word problem, it might be a word problem about Snapchat streaks, because that's something that's going to catch their attention. That's something that they know. You might even create a social media account that you can share resources with your students if they want to join with that, because they maybe are not so good at looking at email or looking at Canvas. It's just another way. And you want to incorporate some peer review opportunities. You can let them revise each other's, or help them to revise each other's papers. If they're going to turn something in, have a peer look over it before they hand it in. A, it's going to save you some time, because they're going to get some of these corrections out of the way before they actually hand it in. But B, it's also a way of building that community. They're working in a partnership. They're working together towards a common goal, and that's really nice. If you want to know more about community in an online classroom, let me tell you about a really great course that we have from the Faculty Center. It's the Online Teaching Basics course. There's actually 2 parts, part 1 and part 2. Each part is a 4-week course, and a lot of that focuses on that building community piece. And you can see it in action, because you come into the class and you act as a student in the class and see it from the student's perspective. It is a $50 deposit, but you get your money back if you successfully complete the class. And you do get a certificate of professional development when you're done. If you're interested in this class, if you haven't taken it yet, consider it. It's a really great class. And there's more information on the Faculty Center website. And those are links that if you get the PowerPoint later from the Women's, I keep forgetting what they're called, Women's Alliance Network, it should be on their website too. Now let's talk about that peer review in a little bit more detail. So like I said, the peer review is this other way of building the community in the classroom where the students are working together toward a common good. And you can allow the students to look over each other's work and make comments. And you can actually do that in Canvas. I don't know how much of Canvas you've explored yet, but this is something that you can do in Canvas. You can set it up and students can do peer reviews of each other, use the annotation tools, make comments, make suggestions, and that can be really helpful. We do a lot of that in the online teaching basics class as well. And if you're not sure how to do it, you can always look at your Canvas. There's a course that tells you all about Canvas that's in your dashboard. It has a rocket ship on it. There should be some of that in that course to get more information about that. Now, thinking about how are we going to get these students engaged? What kind of activities are going to excite them? What's going to keep their attention up? Well, one thing that you may want to do is you want to recognize that there's limits to their concentration. In this article by Tom Armbrecht called Engaging Adult Learners, Part 1, How to Avoid Being Boring and Confusing, he talks about knowing that students do have a limit to how much they can retain at once, and they're going to start to fade away if you don't keep changing it up. And so we want to change it up every now and then so that they don't have a chance to get bored. He suggests that you might chunk the material, which is to break down the material into little bite-sized bits, and those bite-sized bits would be easier for the students to remember. There's a couple more articles. This one is about chunking, and this one is about the magical number of 7. This was back in 1956 that George Miller proposed this, and he said that there's only about 7 things that you can think about at once, plus or minus 2. And so we do have limits on our processing of information, and so that's why it's better to break it down into smaller bits. And to promote student engagement, it doesn't have to always be you talking, kind of like I'm talking right now. To promote engagement, you don't have to be the center of attention as the instructor. Let the students talk some of the times. Let them do a presentation. Or change it up. Let them write on the whiteboard, or do a poll, or do a quiz question, or something different. Just keep changing that activity, and that will help them to stay engaged in their learning. Some other engagement activities from Sarah Kavanaugh are have a routine. Again, that's comforting for students to know exactly what to expect, and maybe have the same routine in every class period. Maybe from 8 o'clock to 8:05, you take the attendance. And then from 8:05 to 8:30, you do a little review. And at 8:30, you start introducing some new material. And maybe every day at 9 o'clock, you have a brain break where they can go and have a rest for a minute and come back at 9:05. So a routine is also nice. That helps them to stay engaged. And then it also helps you because it's like a schedule for you to follow. Change it up. When you have a class that's 90 minutes long, please don't speak at them for 90 minutes. It's not going to go well. They're not going to be able to hold their focus that long. And so keep switching the activity every couple of minutes. Maybe do 5 minutes of a lecture, and then maybe you do a 2-minute video. And then maybe you have an activity for 10 minutes and back to lecture for 7 minutes. Then do a 1-minute poll and then a 4-minute discussion and do a reflective writing assignment and then let them write on the interactive whiteboard. Keep on changing it every couple of minutes. It's about 5 to 10 minutes or 7 to 10 minutes, depending on the source, that we think that students can hold their attention. And so it does have to be kind of quick, and you're constantly changing things up. I've seen some instructors put up a 45-minute lecture, and I don't think the students are really listening for 45 minutes, unfortunately. You might have to give them a little activity in there in between. This guy is pretty funny. His name is Curtis Bonk, and his name is Dr. Bonk, so I guess he would have to be pretty funny. But he has this book called Empowering Online Learning, 100+ activities for reading, reflecting, displaying, and doing. And he says, don't be afraid to be a little bit silly, because that's going to capture the student's attention. Here's a picture of him, and he's got a lightsaber, and he's dressed in some sort of a gown or something, and he's doing his lightsaber. And guess what? I bet those students are paying attention to him at that moment. And he's probably talking about whatever subject he teaches as he's dressed up like this and swinging this lightsaber around. But he's holding the student's attention. And so that's another idea, just to change it up and don't just sit and be boring, and that will help with the student engagement. So let's talk about active learning next. We really want our students to be active learners. We don't want them to passively just sit there and listen. That's not going to be good enough for them. They want to be able to get involved in their learning and get them actively engaged. In this article from Inside Higher Ed called Virtual Learning Should Be and Can Be Hands-On, they say that you don't want students to just sit and watch your face for 90 minutes and listen to a lecture. We want them to do something. Is there something that they have in their house? Is there online free material that they can do something with their hands, perhaps? My friend Paula is a science teacher, and back when the pandemic first started, she was over at my house. Of course, we were 6 feet apart. And she was all upset. She says, how in the heck am I supposed to teach science online? I can't do it. We used to do this experiment and they made crystals. And said, how am I supposed to do that at home? I said, well, maybe you can do something at home that they have around the house. Like, could you make crystals out of sugar, for example? Because they probably have sugar in their house. And they probably have a glass, and they probably have water and some string, and they could probably make rock candy and make sugar crystals and do that from home. And then you guys can talk about it in class. And they could. And so it was a way to make hands-on learning, even though they weren't right there next to the students. And so that worked out very well. Have them do a little activity at their house. Figure out what they have around there with them that they can do this activity with. Or for older kids, maybe you have them research on the internet something. Get them to do it, though. Don't just talk at them, but instead get them to do something that's hands-on. You can do a small engagement activity like a think, pair, share. You can make use of the breakout rooms that you have available to you in your web conferencing tool. You can have a student make a presentation instead of it always being the instructor talking. And that just gives us a brief break so that we can process our information. And then we can store that information in our heads a little bit better. I'm not sure if you've ever done this, but these are kind of neat. They're called Webquests, or sometimes they're called scavenger hunt. That link up there is a search engine for Webquests, and you type in the topic that you teach and see if somebody else has invented a Webquest before you. So I found this one, it's on a science topic. And what it is it's an inquiry-oriented lesson. You're going to have the students go out to the internet and look stuff up, and then write things down to answer the question. Instead of you saying it, they actually are going to go do it. So in this example, and this goes for much longer than this is only very top of it. It's talking about cell division, and they tell you, go to these 2 websites, and then I want you to name 3 ways, and the students have to fill this out. Well, by going there to that website and then reading about it and finding these ways that they're different and writing them down, all of that is helping them to store it in their brain more than if you were just to say it to them. And so that's the idea of this active learning. Then they have to draw a picture of the cell. So that, again, they have to look it up, find a picture of it, and then draw it for themselves. And that act of drawing it is getting it into their heads a little bit better than if you just flashed up a picture of one, because now they're doing instead of just listening. And it goes on and on from there. That was just a sample. Another idea about active learning is to let them touch the whiteboard, the interactive whiteboard. And also you can do it. You can do some on-screen action. So you might want to circle things on the board or highlight something as you're talking about it. And, you know, you can, I don't know if you can see my pointer here. You can get a laser pointer and underline things as you're talking, just to make it slightly more interesting than a plain old PowerPoint. Off. The other thing you can do is you can use a virtual whiteboard. And so you can stop your presentation for a moment, turn on just a blank whiteboard for the students and have them write something on the whiteboard. You might pose a question to them. You might say something like, tell me your favorite active learning technique, and then have them go and write it on the whiteboard. And let everybody use different colors and their own handwriting and draw pictures about things if they want to draw pictures about things. It's, again, a way to get them to be active learners. Another thing that you can do for active learning is if you want to do a video for students, You can try making your video using Kaltura Media Space, which is on the Rowan website, and you can embed quizzes in the middle of the video. So what will happen is the video will play for a little while, and then it stops and it asks you a question, and you have to answer the question. And after you answer it, the video resumes. You're probably familiar with this when we do our training sessions from Rowan. A lot of times they'll do this. It kind of forces them to stay engaged because you can't get up and walk away and make a sandwich because it's going to stop the video, and then you're going to have to answer this question before it moves on at all. But you can actually build those yourself using Kaltura Media Space, and this link will have ideas for how to build them. Another thing that you can use in a web conferencing tool is polls. Again, remember that you want to break up your material. So talk a little while and then give them a poll to do. So you might start a poll, and I've tried to start a poll from here, but I think because I'm not the original person that started this meeting, I can't. But when you do a web conference and you're the original person, you can actually start a poll. I was going to give you a poll right here, but I don't think I can do it, but that's okay. Because I was switched to being the host and I didn't really start this meeting, but it's all right. But you might give them some sort of a poll, which pops up on the screen, and ask them a question, and then you can see what kind of answers they'll give. You might ask them questions every 7 to 10 minutes because, like we said, their attention is going to start to wane after 7 to 10 minutes. It's kind of like when you have commercials on the TV. So the TV plays for a little while and then it stops and gives you a commercial, and it's kind of like a break, right? A break from watching that show and retaining the information from that show. Okay, relax a little bit. Now let me talk about, let me answer this question on the poll. And then we'll go back to our regular programming. And again, it's another form of chunking that material. And you can even give students points for answering the poll as participation points. You can let them, do that just to switch up the action. Polls are available in most of the web conferencing tools, including WebEx and Zoom and Big Blue Button. Sometimes you can share the results of the polls. Sometimes you want to, sometimes you don't. If it's something that's pertinent to the class, you can share the results, and then you can discuss. I wonder why most people said that C was the right answer. Do we really think that C is the right answer? Something like that. Or in other cases, you just might not want to share the results of the polls with the students. Like we did back on one of the first slides, you might display the results of the poll in a web cloud, and it will enlarge the ones that were selected the most often. And so I was going to give you a poll about engagement, and this might be the web cloud that you might get from doing engagement. And it looks like learning is the biggest thing that people think about when they think about engagement. There's other things like technology and students and instruction and that are coming up pretty big too. There is a software called Poll Everywhere, and it is Rowan University supported. And there's an overview here at that link where if you go in with your Rowan account, you can have a bunch of polls available to you. I've also put on there the training materials and a getting started guide for it. And you can use it with web conferencing, which is another option that's a little bit more advanced than the ones that come with the web conferencing tools. Another thing you want to do is ask your students questions, because that'll get them engaged as well. It'll get them participating. And remember that there's lots of different kinds of questions. There's short answer, there's true false, multiple choice, but also multiple select, where they can select a bunch of them. There's open-ended, there's numerical questions. There's so many different question types that keep changing it up to keep it interesting for the students. You can also ask questions using the Socratic method, there's Socrates, where you ask a challenging question of them, an open-ended question, and then you can send students to a breakout room and have them do a breakout session and answer that question. Then maybe they come back to the whole group again and you discuss the different ideas that the different groups came up with. Then you might switch them and have them go down to a different breakout room and discuss it again and keep going deeper and deeper and deeper into it. So that's a neat technique that will keep them quite engaged. Now, every time along the way, you want to do little checkpoints. You want to make sure they're still engaged. And so every now and then, check in with them. Now, you could do it a couple times a class, depending on what kind of check-in you're using, or at the end of the week, just check to see how everything's going, or maybe at the end of the chapter or the end of the unit, you might check with them. You might want to do a formative assessment and find out how it is going for them, which will then inform what you'll do next. If it's not going well, if they really didn't understand that chapter, you might have to drop back. Or if it is going well, then you know you're ready to move forward. And it focuses right on those objectives that you've set up or the learning goals that you've set up. I'm going to do another plug for the Faculty Center here because we have this brand new tool called the Student Response System tool. And anybody can use it, and it's free. And this will give you quick data collection and review. And the students, it's almost like a Kahoot. If you've used that, the students can access these quizzes that you make up right on their cell phones. And you can quickly shoot out the question to them. They can answer the questions and the results come right back to you immediately. And that way you can adjust your lesson. Let's say you ask the question about mitosis and nobody knows the answer. Well, then now you know what you need to do. You need to go back a little bit and go back over mitosis. But on the other hand, if everybody's getting the question right, well, then you know you're ready to go on to the next concept. It provides some instant feedback. And that link will take you to where you can find out more information about it. And feedback is another one. After you've gotten the questions asked, let the students give you some feedback. You can ask if you're going too fast or too slow. On WebEx, there's a button for that. There's a button, it's like a person running and a person walking for you're going too fast for me or you're going too slow for me, that the students can press while you're speaking. And you can either slow down or speed up depending on what they need. You can get even more detailed feedback than that. You might say, what do we need to go over before this test happens tomorrow? And let them tell you what they're struggling with. You might also ask for feedback about your teaching methods. Like, do you like having assignments on Sunday night or should we switch them having to on Monday night? Would that be better? Or what would be a good time for me to hold office hours? Again, there's a tool that's available at the Faculty Center called the feedback tool. It's kind of like the other one, but not exactly. And again, it's brand new this year that anyone can use. And it gives you some feedback from your students. But in this case, it's not instructor-made questions. In this case, it's questions that the company made up, and they're related to teaching practices. And then there's one question that gauges their overall perception on whether or not they understood the material that was covered. These are the questions here. It's called the feedback tool or the instant feedback instrument. And again, it's available for everyone. It comes on their cell phones and you get your information right back to you and just asks if they understood everything. And also it'll give you suggestions for these teaching activities. If you score low, the company will give you some tips on how you can do better on that part. And so that's really nice. In this one, the instructor cannot add a question or edit a question. If you want to do that, you use that other tool. And then when you close out your class, again, remember that students are going to remember the first 5 minutes of class and the last 5 minutes of class the best. And so don't just end your meeting, but have a nice closing and an important closing. Maybe you want to give students points for answering a question in your closing. You might use what they say in a response to inform what you'll do the very next day. You might use something like an exit ticket. An exit ticket would be a ticket that they have to complete before they can leave the class. It's like, answer this question before you go. There's a whole article about sample exit tickets right here. Or another idea is to use an exit poll. Provide feedback to the teacher about how the class went. Or ask them to tell what they learned that day and how they can apply what they've learned that day. Ask them about the objectives that you talked about at the beginning of class. Go back over those objectives and say, which one of those objectives was the most successfully reached and why? Those are good things to do at the very end of the class. You can do a closing question about a key concept or about how the class went. You could say, for an exit ticket, what would be the first step in solving this type of math problem? And see if they can answer that. Or you might say, what did you accomplish in your small group today? Or you might think about your teaching methods. Today we used the virtual whiteboard a lot. Did you like that? Was that useful or did you not like doing that? and get some feedback on your teaching as well. For the end of a chapter or a unit where it's a bigger closing, you might have them do some reflective writing. And there's some information about reflective writing here in this article, asking them about what they thought and felt and what the reactions were and what was really going on with them. To go a little bit deeper, it might even be an assignment that they get some points for. Remember that you want to start off strong and end strong, because the people are going to remember the beginning and the end the most. And so plan it. Plan your finish, plan your beginning, and you still can plan everything in between too. Here are some things that can boost engagement. You could do stories or images or videos or polls at the end of the lesson. And so I have an example video for you. And this is an example of what not to do. I don't know if you remember the movie Ferris Bueller's Day Off and how the teacher was not engaging the students. But if you felt like you could, I'm running out of time, so I'm not going to play it. But there's the video of this teacher who is giving an example of unengaged students or what not to do. And then I'm also going to close out my presentation here. But before I go, here's some additional information. There are some organizations that are dedicated to online learning, and you can get a lot of ideas there, or just Google online learning to get some good ideas as well. And that is the end of that slideshow. And I really appreciate everybody coming to see this. And
Natalie, I'm sorry, everybody. I think we lost Natalie's voice there for a moment.
I'm back.
Okay, thanks, Natalie.
Sorry about that. I was saying thank you very much, and we'll take some questions that were put into the chat.
Of course. Thank you, Natalie. Denise, do you want to handle the Q&A?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
No problem. Natalie, that was amazing. I love your slideshow, and I just wanted to let everybody know that this session is being recorded. Just to reiterate what Chrissy said in the very beginning, the recording of this will be available on the Rowan University Women's Alliance Network website, and you could just click on the tab for the calendar of events, and you'll see how you can access the recording there. So much amazing information. So one question we have from the audience, the attendees, is, can students use the student response tool on their computers, or is it only for phones?
It is any device that connects to the internet. So they could use an iPad, a tablet, a laptop, any kind of computer, phones. Yep, anything.
And then is it the same for the feedback tool as well?
Same thing. Same thing.
Awesome. I love that you offered the student response tool and the feedback tool too. I think those are amazing opportunities to engage the students, and I'm sure looking for all these tricks keeps you on your toes, Natalie.
Yes, yes. Well, we have a new student evaluation system that we're using this fall, and that actually came as part of the package. And so we got these 2 free tools as part of it. So we are sharing that out so everybody can use it, whether or not you're using our student evaluation tool or not. Everybody can use these tools, and they're really nice.
So many of the links that you provided in your presentation today are amazing. And I know it's almost like it's hard to keep up with them all. Can colleagues of ours have access to those links on the Faculty Center site, or where would be the best go-to place for connection to those links?
Yes. So I might ask my web designer if we can put that up on our Faculty Center website. I'll put that whole presentation, the whole slideshow up there, and then you can click the links from there if you want. But we might also put them in another way up on the website too. We'll have to see what we can do there, because there are a lot of rich information there. Thank you.
That would be so helpful. I think sometimes rather than reinvent the wheel, there's so many great things that are go-to links. One of the questions I had also was, what have you found to be some of the what have you found to be some of the most helpful ways to keep students from zoning out during virtual learning? You talked about a lot of amazing techniques, but do you have some favorite go-to tricks?
I like to, like I said, just shaking up the activity every couple minutes, changing up the activity, but also I can ask them to use, they can do a thumbs up if they understood the last concept, or they can do a frowny face if they're getting confused. Especially I teach math, so especially with that, if they're getting lost, they'll just put right into the, I don't want to say into the chat, but they can give me a feedback real fast, and I can say, okay, wait, we got 3 people confused. Let's just slow this down a little bit, or back this up a bit. But then I'll also say, did that make sense what I just said there? And they'll give me a thumbs up or something like that, and then I can tell who's really there and who's really participating just with that one quick action, and it gives them something to do too. And I can tell they haven't walked away and gone back to bed.
Do you require that they show their picture, that it is a live feed during classes? So
if I'm presenting, I'll probably have them take their video off, just so not everybody's looking at what's going on in everybody else's room. But when we go to small groups and we're working together on lessons, I ask them to please put their videos on, and they all do. None of them really have a problem with that. So I don't force it. But I say, it would be really great if you had your video on so I can see your expressions, because when I'm in the classroom, I can see their confused faces also. And I know, wait a minute, they're not getting that. Or I can see the little light bulbs going off in their heads too. And I say, I'd like to see that. If you would turn on your video, that would be great. And they always do. I haven't had any problems of people saying I'm not turning it on.
No, that responsiveness is great. I'm glad that they're listening to you, and even if you have to spell it out sometimes. And
my video's on, so they see me, and we deal with bedhead, we deal with, funny outfits, but it's all good. And we have this atmosphere of, we don't make fun of each other. If somebody's wearing their pajamas or whatever, we don't make fun. We're a community. We're a group that we have to work together and get this common goal of learning this information before the end of the semester. So yeah, they're pretty good.
Have you ever gone to the extreme of actually dressing up or grabbing a lightsaber to gain the attention of your class?
I have not had a lightsaber, no. But let's see, have I ever? No, I don't think I'm that. I do a lot of like jokes and cartoons. There's a lot of really fun math cartoons of like misunderstandings with math, and I do that at the very beginning of all of my online classes right now. I put up like the funny cartoon of the day when they're signing in so that they have something to look at. And I'll use puns and things like that, but I have not ever dressed up. Maybe I should try that. It's kind of interesting.
The idea is definitely out there now.
Yeah.
Another question for you, Natalie. How can faculty help to support remote learners when it comes to issues of stress management?
Yeah, so once again, realize that it's not all you, that there are other resources on the campus, and make sure you're connecting students with the other resources. And if they're feeling stressed, say, look, I can help you, but there's also this. I would probably meet with those students more frequently. I would say, can you stay after class for a little bit and we'll chat about something? And maybe I have a student right now who gets overwhelmed easily, I guess you could say. And I tell them, don't listen to what I say in class. I'll tell you what you need to do. And I'll talk to them on a Monday and I'll say, do this a little bit. And then I'll talk to them again on Tuesday. Now do this a little bit. And then on Wednesday, this a little bit. And that's been proving helpful for him this semester because he was feeling sort of overwhelmed. But we try to, you want to be almost like a friend to the students too. You want them to think that they can go to you if they have a problem. But then also we can refer them out to other places that would know more about handling the stress than maybe I might. But so a little bit of both, a little bit of referring them, but also a little bit of nurturing them as well, I would say.
That's important to remember. That's super. Another question I have, some educators are now tasked with teaching in person and virtually. So with both these things going on simultaneously, how can we best provide engaging content to both groups of students at the same time?
And that's really hard, isn't it? Because you're trying to meet the needs of different kind of learners at that moment. And so when I do where half the class is in person and half the class is online in kind of a hybrid situation or high flex situation, I almost run it as if it's a completely online class, except that I have some of them sitting there. I have them bring their laptops, and they're online too, even though they're sitting in front of me.
Okay.
And when we do group work, I've got some group works that are only online, and I've got some group works that are face-to-face, and they can also interact with each other. The people that are face-to-face can go and meet with the people that are online, because they can look at them right from their computer and go into the groups together if they wanted to, or not. And I'm having trouble with, we can't have them sit next to each other and do their math problems together. And so sometimes what I'll do is I'll have one go up to the board, and then they have two other partners that watch what they do up on the board, and they can be 6 feet away, and give them suggestions on what to write. But then you also have your partner that's on the video, and they can give suggestions too, and we'll point the camera towards the board. And yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of different things going on, but it is tricky. It is definitely new and tricky, and I've been teaching for forever, but this is a new one. So yeah, we just have to adapt. And that's what teachers do. We have a plan A and a plan B and a plan C. And if none of it works, then we go to plan D. And they understand. I think the students understand that this is tricky. And so they're willing to work with you, and they're willing to cooperate, I think. And that's really nice. And so those are some of the ideas that I do with hybrid learning. But yes, it is tricky.
Yeah, I think that honesty back and forth, I think it's definitely a two-way street when you show the students that, this is a struggle, it's very relatable.
Yeah, and I use a lot of the grouping on Canvas too. Canvas allows you to put students in group. So I have the brown group and the gold group, which is the school colors. The brown group come this day, and the gold group come that day, and I have the calendar set up on Canvas, and it's like today is brown and today is gold and the next day is brown, and then there's a third group that's always virtual. So yeah, so I try to be very, very organized and lay it out there for them so they know exactly when they're supposed to show up and whose turn it is today. And so that's been helpful too, to put them into different groups on Canvas. It's as simple as you're just sliding their names over into the different groups. And we have that kind of grouping, and then we have another kind of grouping, which is the small groups that we use. That's a little bit different from that grouping. So, and you can make multiple groups in Canvas, which is nice. So that's a little bit more handy than Blackboard for grouping.
I think hopefully we have time for one last question.
Sure.
How has the Midsemester Focus on Teaching and Learning program been impacted by COVID?
So we're not running the Midsemester Focus right now this year. Because normally what we would do is we would go into the classroom and we would do a group of students and poll them. And we can't really do that right now. And so we've put a hold on that, but it'll come back when we get back into the classrooms. And that's another reason that we've been trying to promote these two tools, because that's another way to get feedback from the students. A little different from the Midsemester Focus, but it's again another way that they can get some informal feedback from students, although not necessarily anonymous. But actually with the tools, if you want it to be anonymous, where the name field is, the students can just type X. And if they all type X, then you don't know which is which, but they do have to have something in their name field. And the one is not anonymous by design, so that you can help the students that are needing the most help. So sorry, there's no Midsemester Focus this time around.
Thank you so much. I'm going to turn it over to Chrissy for a couple of closing remarks.
Thank you.
Natalie, this has been outstanding, so informative. Thank you for bringing your skills and your knowledge to us today.
Thank you. And check out that Faculty Center website. There's a lot of good information on there for everybody on all different topics. We're here to help you.
Thanks, Natalie. This was really amazing and so interesting for me. So like many of us, right, I have a little one who's virtually learning right now. Yeah. And I can see some of the things that you talked about that her teachers are doing, but it's interesting to think about the ways that we can use this opportunity to change the way that we're delivering education to our students, right? To change their experience and really help them. So I loved it. And thank you again so much for being with us today. I really, truly appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. So again, everyone, I just want to remind you, like Denise said, a recording of this video will be on our website. I am going to share the link again with you here in the chat, or sorry, in the Q&A, so that everyone has it. That will also have a calendar update of all of our future events, including that November event that I plugged before, for leadership talks by women from Rowan University. I do want to take just a very brief moment to thank our sponsor, TD Bank. TD is a sponsor of the WAN's programming, and they really help to provide us grant funding so that we are able to provide this free professional development for you. So we're very grateful for their partnership and support of both the WAN and of Rowan University. Really, we're just glad to have a partner in the business and in the community who helps us to spread our message and get the good work that's happening here at Rowan out there. So thank you, TD. Thank you again to Denise Dennery, our Program and Special Events Committee chairperson, and her entire team. A big thank you to Teresa DeVecchis for her amazing behind-the-scenes tech savvy, and also all the marketing for this event. Her and her team really did a fabulous job. So thank you again, everyone, for being here. We look forward to seeing you at our next event. Take care, be well, and stay safe. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Natalie.
You're welcome. Thank you.